Hello my friends, my name is Rachel. If you're new to my channel, then welcome. I am just sharing my journey with the carnivore diets to heal from years of severe chronic illness. Thankfully, I've seen a lot of benefits so far, and I will put a link to the video I just put out where I shared the health improvements that I've seen so far after 6 months. Anyways, today I'm going to be sharing the pros and cons of the carnivore diet that I've noticed in my own journey so far. Just things that may be helpful to keep in mind if you are just starting out with this way of eating or considering it. We'll start with the pros. So the first one and the most important one is the health benefits. Typically after people get over the transition phase, they'll see increased energy, better sleep quality, more mental clarity. I won't go into too much depth with the health benefits in this video, but that I would say is the number one pro of this way of eating. The second one is simplicity. So when you're only eating meat, it makes things pretty simple in regards to food choices. That leads me to the next pro, which is that you're going to be saving a lot of time with grocery shopping and with your eating. I order all of my meat from a farm, and so I don't ever have to step foot into a grocery store, so that saves a lot of time and energy. Also, a lot of people on the carnivore diet find that after they get past the transition phase, they tend to not need to eat as much. They're much more satiated with their meals, and they can go much longer periods of time without eating, and most people don't feel the need to snack in between meals at all. I would say the majority of the carnivore community is doing either 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. I personally am doing 2 meals a day. I'm not able to eat enough in one sitting to do just 1 meal a day, but I remember when I started the carnivore diet, I thought like that sounded crazy. Like how do people do 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day? And now that I'm in it, I'm like, I could see like eventually getting to the point where I could do 1 meal a day, but I just gradually went from the 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day, and now I am doing intermittent fasting, where I just do an eating window where I just eat between the hours of like 11 and 4, which is pretty common in the carnivore community as well. But do keep in mind that everybody is different, and it's totally okay if you're doing 3 meals a day, or if you have to snack in between meals, or whatever it may be. Everybody is different, and don't feel like you have to just start out with 1 meal a day, especially if you're in a situation like I was in, where I needed to gain weight when I started my carnivore journey. So at that point, I was just trying to eat as often as possible and as much as possible. So everyone's different, but in general, in this way of eating, people find that they don't have to eat as often, and that in turn saves you a lot of time in your day to spend your energy doing something else other than eating and preparing meals. Fourth one is that this way of eating can actually save people money in a lot of cases. I know many are concerned about the cost of the carnivore way of eating, but there are a lot of very affordable ways to do this diet. For me, I'm actually spending more money on food than I was in the past, but for many people, they find that they don't eat out as much, they cut out alcohol. There are very affordable ways to do this way of eating, and there are also very expensive ways to do this way of eating, and just because I order all of my meat from a farm does not mean that you have to do that. Things like eggs, cuts of beef, like neck bones, you can often get those for like $2 a pound, and they have a lot of meat on them, and that a lot of times the cheaper cuts are actually the cuts that are better for you, with more collagen and nutrition in it. So that's just something to keep in mind. This is definitely a topic that I'd like to make a whole separate video about, to kind of share some tips and tricks to save money on the carnivore way of eating. The fifth one is, with this way of eating, most people find that they don't get overly hungry and they feel very satiated from their meals, and so things like fasting become a lot easier when doing this way of eating. But just like I said before, if you're not in a spot where you can fast, then that's totally okay. The sixth one is that most people on this diet find that they don't get sunburned easily, that they can stay out in the sun without sunscreen on for long periods of time and not get burned. This is something that I have personally noticed in my 6 months with this way of eating, is that I can stay out in like the direct sunlight for hours and not get burned. I am very pale and fair-skinned and used to get sunburned very easily, so that's something that's really cool about this diet. I don't think it's specifically carnivore, but I think it's more cutting out the toxic seed oils and processed foods that make us much more susceptible to burning. I would say the last one for the pros is being able to conquer sugar cravings. So this is something that a lot of people struggle with in the beginning. At least for me, it feels good to be able to say no to foods that are not good for me and things that are not going to help me get healthy. And I'll be honest in saying that if I see something like a cake or a cookie, I may be thinking I'd really like to have some of that, but it's not like an intense, like I need to have that cookie or I need to have that cake like some people experience with sugar cravings in the beginning. The intense cravings definitely don't last forever, and yeah, I find it kind of empowering to just be able to say no to foods that aren't good for me. And I think everything we eat matters, and I just want to give my body the best chance possible to heal. So that's been a big pro for me of this way of eating. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the cons of this way of eating. But I do want to point out that depending on the person and where you are in your journey and how you're looking at these things, they may also be pros for you and not cons. Okay. First one is a lack of variety. So on the carnivore diet, you're only eating meat and animal products, so a lot of people find this very restrictive and miss having other flavors of like vegetables and spices and fruits. It's something that I have definitely missed, but I've come to be very used to it. So it really just depends on the person whether you see that as a con or not. That is a really big one that can be hard for people especially when they first start with this way of eating. The second one is there are not a lot of easy snack foods available or foods that you can grab really quick on the go. You typically have to cook all of your meals and kind of prepare them ahead of time, especially if you're someone like me that's doing a low histamine carnivore diet, and I cook all of my meat from frozen at this point. So that definitely takes some planning ahead where I have to start cooking my meals typically an hour or two beforehand. So that definitely makes it hard if you're hungry and you want to just grab something quickly. But there are definitely options, especially if you're doing regular carnivore and not the lion diet like I'm doing. You can make beef jerky, bacon, just take that on the go. You can literally just eat butter. Some people do that. I know for some that may not sound appetizing, but anyway. The next one, I think maybe one of the hardest ones for a lot of people, is the social aspect. So this way of eating can make going out to eat really difficult, especially depending on how strict you are with the diets, because when you go to a restaurant, you don't know what kind of oils they're using or spices or marinades they're using on their meats. Some people may find it uncomfortable or embarrassing having to be so specific with their waiter about how they need to have their meat prepared. And even then, you never really know exactly what goes on with your food. So for me, I really don't go out to eat at all. I will go and just sit there and not eat, but there is something to be said about having like a shared experience when you are going out to eat and being able to like talk about the food and stuff like that. And I think depending on who you're with, they may feel bad for you if you're not eating anything, or they might make fun of you, or they might try to pressure you into eating something that you don't feel comfortable with eating, or something that doesn't make you feel good. So those are just things to be aware of. For me, that hasn't been a difficult aspect because I've been so sick that I haven't been able to participate in activities like that. So that is not a big factor for me because I just want to do anything I can to heal and get back into living life. And if doing this way of eating makes it so I can do more things and actually like go out to a restaurant with my friends and family, then I'm okay with not eating anything when going out to eat. I'm just happy that I can go out at all. So I think it really just depends on the person and the situation, how much the social aspect of this way of eating affects you. Okay. Traveling. So traveling on this way of eating can be difficult because typically when you're traveling, you may be eating out a lot more. And like we just talked about, eating out can be very difficult or impossible depending on how strict you are and how sensitive you are. I haven't traveled a lot since going carnivore, but something that I find to be really important is staying in a place that has a kitchen so I can bring my own meats and cook it there. Yeah. The next one is that in the beginning, when doing the carnivore diet, for some it can be hard to eat enough. This is something that I struggled with because the food is so filling and it takes a while for your body to adjust to the different way of eating. Some people, it may take a while for their hunger cues to kind of adjust, but I think thankfully for most, after a month or two of the diet, it tends to improve a lot. It has for me. I'm able to eat a lot more now. So, okay. The sixth one is the transition phase. So this is the topic that I could do a whole video on, but basically most people when starting the carnivore way of eating, they experience a transition phase where they may have flu-like symptoms and may have lower energy, fatigue, headaches, all sorts of symptoms that are no fun to deal with. So that's something that fortunately you only have to deal with once, but it's something that's can last anywhere from a few days to, for some people, up to a few months, depending on your situation and how you go about the diet. So something to keep in mind and prepare for, but there are definitely ways to mitigate the reactions in the transition phase and to make it easier, but typically it's something that can't be avoided altogether. The seventh one is cravings. A lot of people in the beginning can experience some pretty intense sugar and sweet cravings because on this way of eating you're not having anything that is sweet and you're not having any carbs, and so this is something that can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks or even months for people to get over. Typically people recommend eating more fats and salts to deal with sugar cravings, but it's something that you kind of just have to push through. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel and it does feel good to be able to get over those sugar cravings. So I think that's about it for the pros and cons that I've noticed so far with this way of eating. If you guys have anything to add to the list, I'd love to hear it. You can just put it in the comments down below. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe. I have a lot of fun new videos coming out soon and I'm just thankful to be able to share my journey on here with you guys, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.